I've been generating about $182,501 every single week for this e-commerce brand right here, and we need to talk about it. And let's first go on over some results. Now, we see right here in the last 30 days alone, this brand has done roughly $730,005. And if we open up our calculator right here and do a little bit of math, we can see exactly how much this brand has been doing per week, which is $182,501. And the sales are actually down about 1.5% so far compared to the previous 30 days. But if we look in the last 365 days, so essentially in the last year alone, we can see this brand has done roughly $8.7 million in revenue. We began, as I mentioned, during this time period when the sales had actually gone down. Now, if we look right here in March, it did about $810,000. Last year, it did $381,000. And the sales, just for whatever reason, had started to dip for this e-commerce brand. It went back down to $585,000. Then the lowest month of July was around $499,000. But we were able to come in, we were able to do a variety of things to really push it back up to these levels. Now, going on to the Google Ads dashboard to look at some results, according to Google, we've spent roughly $42,000 in the last 30 days to make back $250,000 essentially, and add a 5.34 extra ROAS. This number, it's not fully accurate. The number is actually a little bit higher than this, but that's what Google says. And in the last 90 days, we have been able to generate a roughly $626,000 at a 5.14x ROAS. How is all of this happening to a brand like this? Now, let's first of all understand what this brand actually even is. It is a liquor store brand, and they have a real location, a retail store here in California, as well as an online presence. Their results essentially had started to drop when it came to Facebook ads, when it came to TikTok ads, which is what they were relying on since the beginning of the creation of this brand. And if we go back a few years, we can see exactly what was going on with this brand since it began. This brand actually began late 2018, 2019, but since that time period, it has done $22 million. So the first month of operation was essentially December of 2019, November of 2019. And ever since then, the trajectory has been going upwards for this e-commerce brand. But the main goal of this brand from the beginning, it was not to be the cheapest, because if we go on here on Google and we just type in, for example, whiskey, for example, buy whiskey or just whiskey, we can see there are specific brands, there are specific products which majority of these brands sell, which are similar to each other. For example, this one right here, Whistle Pig, Double Malt, etc. If we just type in that right here, so for example, Whistle Pig, for example, we can see, and make sure to spell it correctly and not just in the wrong spelling, but we can see that similar products come up. Some have differences in terms of how old they are, but nonetheless, you can find similar products like these if you just type in the specific age you want it to be. And then it becomes essentially a price war, which this niche is very competitive to begin with. And you don't want to be starting price wars essentially, because that just means you're going to be losing out on a ton of profit and a ton of scalability. And this brand knew that from the start, even before they began working with Google Ads, which, by the way, if we look all time, they started running Google Ads around 2019, but they really went into it in 2020. In addition to that, as they began to become more established, as they really started to see some initial results going from very quickly $7,000 to $45,000 in revenue, $50,000, then all the way up to $500,000 in the month of April, they knew that this brand had a lot of potential and they could scale it further. So what they did is they immediately went after an omnipresence approach, meaning they wanted to be everywhere. So to implement that, they went from Facebook into Instagram, into TikTok, Google Ads, Bing Ads, and everywhere that they could, including YouTube. This is how they got started. And this really goes to show that just having Google, while it can be a beautiful thing, it just isn't enough. And by the way, during this time, early July of 2020 and so on and so forth, the tracking was a complete mess. And if we go back in time to really look at it, we can see this in full effect. I mean, there was no sort of proper tracking getting done, and as a result, everything was getting double tracked. If we do conversion action, we can see that although there's only one specific conversion action coming up, this number right here was not accurate at all on a very broad level. The ROAS, which it claimed to be doing 9x, was also not accurate, because again, the conversion tracking during that time was not installed properly. They were fully relying on Triple Whale to ensure their numbers were on point, to ensure that their numbers were correct. That's kind of where we began and where we started our work. In addition to that, one of the main things that happened during this time period for this brand, their ad strategy that's in effect right now, their ad approach, it doesn't support that level of scale. So essentially what happens is what got you to this level right here, it's not going to get you to this next level. And what got you to this level right here, it's not going to get you to the next level. Flash forward, when they really started understanding these concepts, when they really started to change things with their approaches, they began to see better results. And the number one thing that they began working on is their own mindset, not the CEO themselves, but rather as a whole team. What they first understood is that scale is possible. They don't have to be stuck at 300,000 months, even though that's a very good number to be stuck at. They knew that they could jump a lot higher. And that's when the first breakthrough came in October, November, and December of 2021, when they crossed their first $1 million month, which was a very profitable month for them. Before we dive into the Google Ads side of things, let's understand what their overall approach was for ads. With Facebook and Instagram, their main approach was not video creatives. Instead, it was an image-based approach. They were literally putting their best-selling products like these ones right here, for example, targeting the right user, and then for their ad copy, they were relating it based on the season or occasion or event that was currently going on. Now, as they started to really dive deep into Facebook ads and also Google ads, the scaling techniques actually brought their own problems. So if we just change this to the last 360 days, for example, during this time period, they were noticing that nothing was really clicking in terms of the overall approach and in terms of the overall strategy. Again, if we click conversions and conversion action, everything seemed to be right, but during this time, things really started to take a turn for the worse because for some reason, somebody came in and somebody installed double tracking. So if you look right here, each campaign has two different revenue numbers. So in essence, although this campaign really only did 357,000 in revenue during this time, or 205,000, it was saying this campaign did $563,000 in revenue. And if you look at their ROAS, it dropped to an all-time low during this time period because the conversion tracking had become a wide mess. Their ROAS, their real ROAS, were actually half of what it was saying right here. So from doing about a 5x, 6x, 7x ROAS back in early 2020, 2021, they now had dropped to a 1.9x, almost a 2x ROAS, which was not a good thing at all for this brand. And it was really pushing their limits and making things go and turn for the worse, which is why, as you see here, their ad spend has started to drop down as well during these time periods. When we came in on June, we did a full-on audit, and that's what we noticed. Their foundation had started to go into ruins and it was really crumbling. So we came in and we began working from the foundation and the ground up. Number one thing we did was implement only one type of conversion tracking. And if we go under measurements to conversions, we can see that only one major conversion tracking, which was done via this in-process app on Shopify, was set as primary. And that's what we began using and running off of. But along with that, we knew that the foundation just didn't include proper conversion tracking, but rather it included things like just the product feed in general, the product titles, images, so on and so forth. During the time we came into play here, we noticed that because this was selling liquor, there was a lot of products which were disapproved for a variety of different reasons. And because it was such a sensitive niche, it was such a sensitive category, even the smallest issues such as not having a valid GTIN or just not having certain things added was causing disapprovals. And we also began working heavily on the best-selling products, images, and titles, because again, we knew that because it's a competitive niche with so many brands selling the same exact thing, we couldn't just be another brand ranking amongst everybody else. So because we wanted to sell premium priced products, we didn't want to lower our pricing. We came in and we focused our attention more on the images. So that meant doing the opposite of what competitors were doing. So if they had products with a white background, we would come in and we would come in with a real lifestyle background, so on and so forth. But that's just one of the things we did. We also improved their product titles, really focused on the SEO side, adding authority, doing keyword research for the right kinds of keywords, and overall just ensuring that we were focusing on improving that CTR to really push it to the next level. But one of the first things we did when we began working with this brand is we completely switched up their ad strategy. Now, in the first month from June 16th to basically the end of July, we ran with one approach in mind, which was focus on the best sellers and then let the other campaigns test anything else out there. And because of that, we only had a select few campaigns running. So these top 6 campaigns were running. The first one was for a specific category that we found was selling the best during that time. The second campaign was a standard shopping campaign. It was something called a catch-all campaign, just running at a very low bid. And essentially all the other campaigns, they were either prospecting search campaigns like a dynamic search, or just for a specific collection, which was this one right here, or it was just a normal shopping campaign, which we were testing around with during that time as well, because Performance Max just didn't seem to work for this brand in the beginning. As our main collection-based campaign really started to take off, as that really started to get some results, we understood that for this brand, the main issue wasn't that the product sucked or that the Performance Max campaigns were working the best. It was rather that there was not enough data to justify running a Performance Max campaign. So we just essentially let the main Performance Max campaign run, and we started testing other products via standard shopping campaigns, because again, we did not want to let other PMax campaigns interfere with this major Performance Max campaign. And by the time we could implement anything else, these standard shopping campaigns had really started to perform well, and they had really started to scale this brand to the next level. So that's just kind of what we worked off of. Right now, the main ad strategy that we are implementing is mixture of shopping and search campaigns, just a major collection-based shop Performance Max campaign with a major standard shopping campaign to test a lot of products. And this is just followed by a main branded search campaign. The dynamic search campaigns and the collection-based search campaigns ended up not performing too well for this brand. But right now, we're keeping things very simple by just focusing on vertical scaling, because that's what this brand responds to the best. And we're really increasing the budgets by 20% every 4 to 7 days. And right now it's on track to spend about $1,500 to $2,000 a day in ad spend. And come Black Friday, Cyber Monday, which is coming very shortly, we implement more search campaigns, dynamic search campaigns, display, discovery, to really cater to that audience and get those extra sales. But if you're doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your brand to the next level. Go on to my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see how we can potentially work together and make that happen. But check out this standard shopping campaign video right here, which explains what kind of approach we're using with this brand to scale it to the next level. And like this video if you found any type of value here, and subscribe if you have not subscribed yet.